Would you buckle up?
Oops. Why do I always forget? Yeah, here winter is coming to an end. They're flowering trees. Grass is very green.
You like Alabama?
So far, I mean, it was the nicest part of the trip. And all these trucks bringing marijuana.
Continue on I-459.
Cocaine.
Where are they bringing all this stuff?
New Orleans.
New Orleans? And
They heard we were coming. So they thought we could sell a lot of drugs.
Your sweetheart and take them to see the photograph starring Issa Rae. How are you supposed to know if you want to spend forever with someone?
I want to try to be together.
It's not practical.
I'm not trying to be practical. I want to be with you.
Listen to Win inside our February Flicks weekend.
Well, I guess the last road trip I did was in New Zealand last summer.
were you alone or with somebody?
Alone, yeah.
Isn't that you always travel most alone?
It's not because I don't like people. Every once in a while, somebody talks about joining me on a trip, and I said, sure, where would you like to go? And they would say, well, I've never been to London. And so it was a choice between, Papua New Guinea and London. Papua New Guinea was, alone, or London with a friend. I chose Papua New Guinea.
So how many countries you visited in your life?
Yeah, people ask me sometimes, and one night before going to bed, I got the list of the countries from the United Nations. And now I don't remember, but I had been to something like, I can't remember, it was more than 100, like 150. But many of these other countries are very small, little island countries in the Pacific. But on the other hand, I can't say I know China or India. So the number of countries that I can say that in some way I know are the countries that I spent the whole summer in. And even then, it was usually just one city. For example, I spent 2 summers in Istanbul, but I just stayed in Istanbul. I didn't. When I took the car from Europe to India, then I visited more places in Turkey. I have a friend whose father is a diplomat with USAID, and of course he's been, everywhere, but as a diplomat. So you always have to be perfectly dressed and perfectly every word perfect, and so every once in a while he loses his sense of taste, and it's completely psychosomatic. It's just a kind of, neurotic reaction against all these formal state dinners, where you have to sit there for a couple hours with government people, and also especially you have to watch your language. You know, you can't betray any kind of government policy, and well, it used to be books. Now it's enough to carry a computer.
So it's good.
Yeah, if I go away for a summer, it would be like 2 suitcases of books. And of course the books are very heavy. So then, and in those days, you could ship books cheaply. So as soon as I read a book, if I was not going to use it anymore in the trip, I would mail it back. But now, shipping books is so horribly expensive. You know, the other day when we were in that post office, I was mailing 2 books to Norway. $39. It's more than the cost of the book. Actually, they're my books. This, I met a woman from Norway, and I liked her very much. She met me in London, and she was afraid of the subway in London, so she wouldn't. Well, it was after that horrible killing in Norway, where that guy shot up a lot of people, so she was still, kind of afraid of. Anyhow, she was, I liked her very much, and she's in psychology. So she had written me recently, and I thought I will send her my books before she spends money to buy them. I can get copies of my books for 40% discount. So, it's kind of hard to think because I don't go back and read them again. One time I wanted to read my first book to see what I think about it now. But I really couldn't read it because these words were so familiar to me, even though I wrote that book 20 years ago, that, I couldn't judge it. But, for a while I thought The Community of Those Who Have Nothing in Common was a book I was very close to. And then later I thought Trust was a book I like. This last book, there are some parts of it that I like very much.
What are they about?
I like the piece I wrote about the trip to Bolivia, which had a theme of solitude. We went to this high plateau, which is so, so uninhabited. And when you look at it, you imagine what the planet looked like when it was first being formed. These rocks, and this enormous salt lake, which is, that's mysterious because where did the salt come from? So at one time it was in the bottom of the sea. So it was when this planet was created that this lake was lifted up and finally evaporated, leaving all this salt. So there were several things that were very moving. On the one hand, the workers of the Great Silver Mountain, and the very fact that because of that wealth, that city was one of the richest in the world at one time. And then the fact that these nuns were living in such solitude and harshness, and yet they were daughters of very rich families. And finally, that native man living all by himself in a village which was now abandoned. That was a piece I liked.
What is the message?
I did think about solitude. In Western history, there were two periods where people sought solitude. And the first was maybe in about the 3rd century in the Egyptian desert, where these religious men went to live alone in the desert. And many people live alone. I mean, in big cities today, there are a large number of people living alone, especially in America. I think only half of the population are living in a family. So a very large number of people live alone. And at one time I had a job delivering stuff. And so I would go to these apartment buildings and ring the doorbell. And many of these people were afraid to open the door. And so many of these people really never, or hardly ever left their apartment, you know. They were afraid, and so they got food delivered, but they didn't open the door. They waited until I left, and then they opened it. So I think that a lot of people live alone and choose to live alone. And so the first time a lot of people sought to live alone was in the Egyptian deserts, and they had the idea that there in the desert that was the most, awesome place, the most grand environment, and in that way also the most sacred. I think a lot of people today feel that. You saw Into the Wild.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't see it? Oh, that made a great impression on me. That guy lived a life that I wanted to live when I was that age. He was a very outstanding student, and an outstanding athlete. And when he graduated, he was accepted to go to Harvard in law school. And his parents wanted to give him a new car. He had some old car. And he took all the money for the law school and gave it to Oxfam. This very excellent NGO. And he got in his car, and he wanted to go to Alaska. And I don't know how many days after he left that he parked the car in an empty riverbed. And in the middle of the night, there was rain, and the car was kind of flooded. And in the morning, he couldn't start it. So he took off the license plate to bury it and abandoned it. And then actually burned the little money he had. So he continued to hitchhike. And at one point, he found a very dear friend, and it was a farmer. And he worked on this farm for a while. And anyhow, he ended up in Alaska. He wanted to spend the summer in Alaska living off the land. So he had a book, of what wild plants you could eat. Eventually he was poisoned. So there was two plants that were similar. And one of them was edible and one was poisonous. And he unfortunately ate the poisonous one. So this place now in Alaska where he died is a place of pilgrimage. When I was in Alaska, I saw that many people walk this section. The movie is fantastic. I love this movie. Sean Penn made it. And he went everywhere where this guy went. Oh yeah, I love this movie very much. So, anyhow, he had this. He wanted to sort of leave society and all this bullshit, and live all somewhere in nature.
So this is what you want to do every summer, leave all the bullshit.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, but I think I can endure it more than other people. I could spend days without really talking to people. And sometimes I have to, if it's a country where I don't know the language. Now, almost everywhere, in hotels and restaurants, there's somebody who can speak English. But anyhow, when I was in Alaska, there were days where I really didn't talk to anyone. And then secondly, in the Romantic period in Europe, what is that, the 18th century, there were people who wanted to go to nature, Goethe and people like that, they wrote about. So in the Egyptian desert, the people that were going to live in the desert alone were seeking the grandeur of reality and the sacredness. This environment so much bigger than humans. And in the 18th century it was very different. They went to spend time in the forest, really searching themselves inwardly. They separated themselves from society in order to discover their own heart and the depths of their own personality.
What is the meaning of your life, Al?
I don't think I can say that.
Did you had any tormented thoughts about it?
I guess not. I think that for me, thinking about philosophy was always prevented me from feeling feeling that life and the world were meaningless, because I was always searching and thinking about things. So
what did you find? Have you found some things like real adventure, which you know that you found it and you know that they're true about life?
Well, on the one hand, I think I have a very kind of positive conception of people. I think my experience that people everywhere really have an enormous amount of goodness. I don't have a cynical idea at all about people.
But
I just see people doing a great deal of good. I mean, just to take some very simple thing. One day here in Lutherville, I spent an afternoon doing a little shopping, always for practical things. You know, there are always kind of things that happen in the house. You have to fix something electrical or something. And so I had, 4 or 5 little purchases to make. And so I went to these big stores like Home Depot. And the people who work there are working class people. And they know everything because they fix everything for themselves. They're working people, so that they know how to fix electrical things, and they know how to do carpentry and so on. And so I would go and ask questions, and they want to help. Because it's a pleasure to help. I think that to me is a kind of, it's a simple idea, but I think this is very strong in me. That it's a pleasure to be helpful. I mean, that's why everywhere I've gone asking directions, I stop somebody, a stranger, and ask them directions. And they stop and spend a couple of minutes of their life to help me to find
In
somebody.
1.5 miles.
And they will
keep
never
left
see me
to
again.
I-20 West.
And I don't give anything in return. So they're not doing this for themselves, but that is just helpful. It's a pleasure to be helpful to people. And I found this everywhere in life. So to go back to this day, I remember at the end of the day, I really had I thought I had such a good day, that everybody I talked to were helpful. And I don't know if you noticed, I haven't, for the birds outside, I have these metal water fountains so that I could put them on this electrical heater so that the water doesn't freeze in the winter.
Keep
So,
left to I-20 West.
So one of them had gotten rusty, and so I thought I could probably paint over this rust with something. So I went to Home Depot, and when I asked my little problem, this woman became very concerned about the fact that so much of these paints are toxic, and that they would be harmful to birds. And she really brought over 3 other workers to study this question. Was there anything in the store that I could paint over this rust that would be, that wouldn't make the bird sick? It's a little example, but you wouldn't expect that ordinary people really would care about birds like that. And so mostly it seems to me that people are have a lot of goodness, and it's not because
Continue on I-20.
it's not because they have some stern rigorous, moral laws that they think they have to follow. But it's a kind of natural goodness. Well, it seems to me that's true with all the other animals. So, all the other animals get along with their own kind. Like the deer, they don't need morality and police because it's natural for them to like one another and to get along with one another. And that's true with birds and, even predatory birds like hawks and eagles don't kill one another. So I think it's natural for people to enjoy helping one another and getting along with one another.
What makes you angry?
I'm sorry?
What makes you angry?
Well, I suppose the main thing is injustice. When people feel that they've been treated unjustly.
Have you ever been treated unjustly?
Yeah. And a couple of times, it used to be regular that I used to get really angry, like at least once or twice a year. Maybe lately not so much, but a friend of mine was writing a book on capital punishment, and he was having difficulty finding a publisher, and so he asked me to read his manuscript to see if I could make suggestions to improve it. When I was reading this, the one thing that struck me, that there was, I think this guy was even a priest who had worked with prisoners for many years. And he said that that people who commit crime because they're not respected. So, that's, you hear this a lot, that in American slang, somebody says, I was dissed. It means I was disrespected. And so very poor people have nothing, like people living in the slums. They still have their dignity, and they insist on it. And nothing makes them more angry and aggressive than not respecting them. When I was a student, I worked in a soup kitchen somewhere in New York. Just making soup for homeless people. And I did understand that everybody has some kind of dignity that they insist on, even if they are, really in a very, very bad condition, if they are drug addicts or alcoholics and so on. But still, they have some dignity.
What would be your limits? I mean, what should I do that you felt, well, this is too much? Get out of the out of the car.
I can't think of anything right now.
In 1/2 mile, turn left on Giles Road, then take the first left.
We need gas.
Yeah.